And welcome to the Cars Billington Proud to Farm podcast. Today we're going to be focusing on a subject that affects most livestock farmers really, and that's young stock. Managing it right from the start can be crucial to the animal's lifetime's performance and productivity. And also crucial to that is genetics. And I'm really chuffed to say that we've got some experts here to talk through those subjects with us. So first of all, we've got Saskia Fletcher from our Calf and Youngstock team, and you look after areas down south, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. And we've got Philip Halhead from Norbrek Genetics. Yeah.
Hello.
And we'll do ladies first, and we'll find out a little bit more about Saskia because it's her first time on the podcast and she was super excited to be here.
Can't wait.
So Saskia, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, your role at Cars Billington. But firstly, can you tell me whether or not you got that soap to work at Great Yorkshire Show?
Let's not talk about the soap at Great Yorkshire.
Sorry, for the listeners, that's a bit of an in thing. So I went to film Saskia when she was shown at the Great Yorkshire, and she was getting all suited and booted and her white coat on and everything. Our crew that was preparing the heifer at the time were having a hell of a time trying to get the soap to work, and there was a few colourful language.
It was. It's a stressful situation on show morning anyway, but that was, yeah.
And how did you get on?
So at the Yorkshire, I think we had a second with the heifer, and I think we were a third or a second with the cow and calf as well. So yeah.
Oh, grand. And you went to Royal Welsh the week after?
We did, yeah. That was a busy couple of weeks.
Absolutely mental how you manage it.
Yeah, it was intense, but no, it was good fun.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we've maybe jumped about a bit there then.
Yeah.
Do you want to come back to tell us a little bit about where you are in the country, what you farm, etc., and tell us a bit about your farming life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Calf and Youngstock specialist for the south of our business. So my area sort of covers Derbyshire, Staffordshire, Shropshire, Cheshire, and a little bit into North Wales. So quite a big area really. But yeah, so I'm generally supporting the southern sales team, the reps, the feed reps, and then a little bit of my own customers as well. So yeah, day to day I'll be out and about on farm. And then at home, I'm actually from a dairy farm myself. So family farm, about 200 high yielding Holsteins. But yeah.
And you've got sheep and beef as well, though,
We've got a very small number of pedigree sheep, and then the beef actually that comes into that's my partner's side of it. So
okay.
Yeah, but I'm quite involved with that now as well.
Super. And Philip, if I can come to you, we had never met before today, actually.
Absolutely.
I think I've obviously seen you about some shows and stuff like that. And did you do judging as well?
Judging, a little bit of commentary as well at country shows, which was a bit of a diversion away from the judging, but I really enjoy that, connecting the public with, very much the public with what we're doing in farming food, and then we'll probably get into it later, but my part and role of my genetics business is understanding consumer behaviour, supermarkets and processors as well. So it's quite a broad role.
Indeed. Well, tell us a little bit about you first, and then tell us about Norbrek.
Third generation dairy farmer, based in Lancashire. So Lancaster, right on the coast, 300 dairy cows, high yielding Holsteins, fully housed all year round. And then I have a genetics business that I developed back in nearly 30 years ago now. And that was beef on dairy, which back then was not such a big thing. But of course, today, beef on dairy is a massive topic.
Absolutely, yeah.
Been lucky enough to grow that business, no doubt get into that throughout the podcast. And we export to quite a few different countries around the world as well. And then more recently, I've developed a self-storage business. So as a family, we've always had diversification as part of the sort of business mix. And our recent one is into self-storage. So.
And you do that on the farm?
I bought a pig farm and developed it into high-quality self-storage. I wouldn't recommend doing that. But
was it a stressful process?
Well, not stressful, but when I look back, I just don't quite know how we achieved what we did in quite short time. But yeah, it's gone well, and it actually building from literally the ground up or sub-zero slurry tanks, filling slurry tanks, and then getting into self-storage. I've literally done it from ground up, and that's served me really well. And I think that's a bit of a learning point in a lot of businesses, is to really get your sleeves rolled up and
get stuck in
and get involved.
Cool. Right. So we'll start sort of lightly off here. And one of the questions that I had was, are people putting enough emphasis on their young stock? Because it is these early years of life, it's really super important to get it right. And there's so many things that we need to think about. Saskia, what do you think?
I definitely think it's been something we've seen that has shifted in the more recent years. You know, people really are starting to invest and look at how we can optimise that, you know, younger animal in the early stages, because at the end of the day, whether you're doing it for dairy on beef or dairy replacements, you know, there is a cost in them early days, but it's a payback at the end of it. So yeah, I do think there's been a massive shift.
Yeah, and do you think if farmers like could really appreciate the cost of an animal over a lifetime compared to the initial investment of the young stock, they would realise just how important that was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I think it is, you know, really starting to be, you know, before calves were maybe the last thing a farmer thought about, whereas now, you know, people are investing in the calf rearers, they're investing in the housing and, you know, just the area completely.
And what can you jump in on that at all?
Yeah,
Philip?
no, I agree with Saskia. And I think when you get beef calves at £800-900, you get dairy heifers regularly now making £3,000. And my prediction is that a £3,000 2-year-old dairy heifer is a thing of the past. I think if we get into 2027, we'll wish we'd all bought more dairy young stock. We'd wish we'd all invested more, because there just aren't those young stock coming through the system. Dairy beef, if you look at the stats across the globe, not just in the UK, across Europe, impacted as well by all the climate change, the dry summers we're having throughout Europe. All of these things are impacting massively and only going to tighten supply. So I think when you get those price pressures, you get those nudges, I think that really brings things back home. Calf mortality, of course, you know, you start seeing a calf, unfortunately, that's, you know, no longer alive in a system that's maybe substandard. You really start putting the sums together, and then Saskia arrives on farm with some good advice and hopefully some good products, and you think, well, what have we got to lose here?
Yeah, that's the thing, I suppose. What's the true cost of a substandard system? Like, what are the pitfalls that people are falling into, or what are they not looking after the most?
Well, sorry, Saskia,
No,
I'll just jump in there, because I think what we've seen over, if I just look back over, let's say 10 to 15 years, the difference on any dairy farm across the UK, you know, 30 years ago, there were 35,000 dairy farmers. There are less than 7,000 today. The reasons for that are mainly financial. There's, of course, all the other reasons that go around why people leave the industry. But the 7,000 that are left are thoroughly professional operators. And they have to be, because the margins are slim. The product, you know, the cost increases we've seen, whether you're putting a building up, you're investing in a new dairy young stock building. What we've seen over the last 10, 15 years is those incremental changes, which I think are massive. So whether it's the Keenan feeder with the data systems on, the new collar system or heat time systems that you're using, all these little things, it's all data points that mean 1 and 2 and 3% improvement that makes a massive difference. Over 10 years, you've suddenly got 25 to 30% improvement. So I sort of see that in the history,
absolutely.
really.
Yeah, I completely agree with Phil on that one. I think, you know, the way that the job is going, data it's going to become a part of everyone's day-to-day, I think, in farming. And in calves especially, it doesn't have to be a massive thing. It doesn't have to be a big investment, you know. Part of my day-to-day is going around weighing calves. So, you know, we'll take daily live weight gains. We'll look at, you know, is what we're doing working? Is that sort of, you know, a starting point of what we need to change? And whether it's weighing calves, you know, you're taking swabs, so we're looking at cleanliness, things like that. And it's all numbers that we need to be looking at, and where can we change things that, you know, maybe the system's not quite what we think it is. And I think that's sort of something I see day to day on farmers. Maybe if we are weighing calves and a farmer thinks that what they're doing is correct, well, if we go and weigh them, and, you know, we aim for 0.8 to a kilo of daily live weight gain, but if they're not getting that, that's when a farmer really, you know, they can't be in denial anymore. They can't say what we're doing is working, we don't need to change anything, because, you know, the proof really is in the numbers. So it's always a good point.
Yeah.
And there's a real competitive environment on most farms as well. The farms who are going to be there in the future, particularly, they're a bit like a football team, I think, Saskia, quite often. They're changing players. Staff, unfortunately, change all the time. We've had some fairly major staff changes on our farm just recently, and we've had a very stable team. I pride myself on, you know, leading quite a stable team. But getting them engaged, getting the individual members of staff and the family members on the farm really facing in the same direction is sort of the first step, isn't it? And
absolutely. I think that's the biggest challenge. One of the biggest challenges I see on a farm is if staff aren't singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone really has to be reading off the same page when it comes to calves in these early stages, because if you've got one person doing one thing and the other doing a completely different, you know, what we really need is everyone in unison. You know, you need complete everything to be the same. And, you know, calves actually thrive off that environment. And I think that's where you'll see the biggest difference.
One of the things that I've noticed is hygiene as well, because we've been to a few farms recently where like the younger part of the generation really understands the importance of keeping really good, clean calf sheds, but then the older generation are a bit like, oh, it'll be all right, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
like what's the true cost of denying that?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what it comes back to. You know, consistency really is key, and we've got to keep these basic things the same, because the way I see it is if you're going into a farm and we're putting in an expensive milk replacer, but you know, the calves are in not the best environment, like you say, hygiene's not there, maybe colostrum management, just nobody's agreeing, it's not going to make up for it no matter how much you're paying for that milk replacer. So I think if you can get the basics right from the word go, you're always going to be, you know, on that ladder.
On the health thing, in 2019, we were lucky enough to, I went to America and we remodeled a Madison, Wisconsin University calf building design, remodeled it for the UK. And unbelievable, the health outcomes from that in terms of the air, the quality, the drainage. If you can just get the drainage right, where we were before, we had a building that was reasonably suitable, but there was still water and dirty water on the floor in areas. And if you wash the buckets down, it sat there for a few hours. And that's where all the bugs breed, of course. Most people recognise that. So the new building, getting rid of any water in there, the air quality just all the time is off the scale. And we lowered our antibiotic use by 85% within the first 12 months. Now, there's a big hit there from a new building, but the scours reduction of 74%, I think we saw as well. So the investment in that building was massive. Mm-hmm. But the one thing we did do as well, we put a kitchen, dedicated kitchen alongside it for only calves and only calf equipment. And if I'm allowed to plug any products, I'm not sure. I think you probably can get it through Cars Billington.
Let's just bash on. I can bleep it out.
Bleep it out if you want. But Cyclex, so we use, using really good hygiene products.
We have that as well, don't we?
That's been phenomenal, and that lovely smell of Cyclex
that clean.
Is clean and fresh, and so. You put all these things together and we're back to those small incremental changes. The calf bucket that, it started life with a cow up in a dirty part of the yard, ended up in the calf building. You've got to stop all that. And it seems simple saying it. I hope, most people listening to this are going to think, well, come on, tell us something we don't know. But I think we have to remind ourselves, maybe not daily, but certainly every month we do a team meeting, right? Where are we winning? Where are we losing? And we try and unblock those points, and you can literally declutter it back to, do you know what, we did actually use those buckets, or where that's where it went wrong and caused an issue with a batch of calves. So,
exactly.
So it's really taking time to declutter, and protocol would be something you'll see a lot, Saskia. And again, you could do a manual, you can do every single detail. You've got to make it simple, because if the team, if you put too much protocol in, it becomes burdensome. If you put too little in, then 2 or 3 different people feeding don't enact it. So getting protocol just right. And if you have foreign team members as well, then in the right language, and there's all that sort of overlay as well.
So Saskia, talk me through some first steps then, some crucials, some key.
I think colostrum management, I think everyone gets a bit bored. We bang the drum about it all the time, but it means so much. It really, really is, And I think there's no one better to have in the room to talk about genetic potential than Phil, but we're never, ever going to reach that full potential if we're not getting the first steps of colostrum management right. And I think the best thing we can do is, put that protocol in place, keep it very simple but very effective. Hygiene's always going to play a massive part in it. Quality and quantity, I think they go hand in hand into being effective. But yeah, I think the main thing is, follow your protocol, make sure everybody is on the same page with it. But I think one that we probably don't look deep into enough is, where's your calf coming from in terms of your calving pen? We talk about scour and we talk about where's it coming from, but one of the biggest changes that we've actually made at home on our farm is we looked at the calving pen and we said, well, we've got scour, we're dealing with it. And I think that's a really good one for anyone that's going onto a farm is don't say this is the issue we've got, say why is it happening, where's it coming
true.
from.
Yeah, good point.
So yeah, we were dealing with crypto, and instead of dealing.
Tell us what crypto is.
So crypto is a form of scour in calves. It hits them at that very early stages, and it can cause some proper issues and massive setbacks into the calves. So yeah, we actually stripped it right back, and we said, well, stemming really from the calving pen. So now we've put protocols in place. It's part of our routine. Every usually 2 weeks, cleaning out properly. Completely empty the shed, take everything out of it, disinfect. And when we say disinfect, make sure you know what disinfectant you're using. Read the actual instructions and know how much time we need to let it sit for it to actually have the full effect. And after doing that and, doing things properly, because it's so easy to say that we do it and we clean out and we disinfect, but do we do it as we should do? And since we've been doing that, we have seen a reduce in it. And crypto is one of the things, and I think it's always nice when I go onto farm for the first time, I don't always say, what do we want to aim for? What do we want to achieve? Like, what problems are you facing? And it's very, very rare I'll go into a farm and a farmer will admit they've got scour, they've got crypto, they've got problems, because we come back to the thing of they're all in denial about it. But generally, the things that we want to achieve aren't achievable because of them things that are in denial, and it's always little things we can change, such as cleaning out the calving pen more regularly. But I always think that's a nice one to start with them very, very early stages. So yeah, know the environment it's coming from, know the environment it's going to, and colostrum management, definitely.
And it comes back to the why as well. So
yeah,
I think with teams, with staff generally, particularly if they're engaged, like we've maybe, had to say goodbye to a couple of people who weren't really bought into our business. And as sad as that is to see, we only want people in our business who are engaged and want to be part of it. And with the protocols, you've got to get, you've got to get the why across to them. So, good saying to somebody, just do this, i.e. clean out the pen. You've got to say because.
Yeah, make them understand.
Yeah. And I know that, again, some simplicities here, but I think it's all too often in a busy farm, we're all under pressure on farms, the margins are tight and times, everything. So it's just taking that deep breath and thinking, okay, let's do this properly, like Saskia said, and what is the right way, and bring your teams in. So Saskia, I would be wanting to have the vets are very involved. We're much more about solutions focus than we are about fire brigade, of course.
Yeah,
I think you see that on most farms. And our vets would send me the data. They do the bloods on the colostrums, on the calves, making sure that our colostrum protocols are in place. And look, I could have brought them here and shown you, through the early part of the year, it had slipped and we'd got some reds on there. And now we're back to greens. And it's because of that testing, we could quickly say, do you know what? This is just slipping. Can we do it better? Can we be quicker at colostrum? Whatever. And we've put a new protocol in place, which I can tell you about later.
That's fine. Sorry, I was just going to jump back to the colostrum thing. Why do people get it wrong?
I think it's really overlooked because, like I say, it's such a simple thing to do, but people don't pay enough attention to it. I think it's definitely something that's become more apparent in recent years that it can have such a big effect, and it really can be the fine line. Like, I can go to 2 different farms who may use the same milk replacer, the same starter feed. They could have the same breed of animal, aiming for the same thing. One could have the correct protocols in place and one cannot. And, that really, really does show the difference, because I think if it's been hindered at the point of not having enough colostrum, or you weren't quick enough, or maybe, what you were using, your bottle or your tube was dirty at the time. If we hinder that calf at that point, it's never really going to hit its full potential. There's no milk replacer in the market that you can put into a calf that's going to compensate for that.
No, yeah, well, I agree with that completely. We noticed a number of years ago, we got our transition cow phase right, and that's in terms of calving, cows transitioning, cleansing, and all that. I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but that's a really important piece. And when we got that 2-week pre-calving transition diet correct, which was a partial decab, for want of a better term, we then found cows calved, and with my genetics hat on, we use our farm as a test bed for some new bulls as well. So we do have bulls that never get to the market because we've seen that some of them are too big. We're looking for more and more easy calving sires all the time, and they only migrate into our genetics business. And so from that, you then also, in that 2-week period, when those cows calve in, all the heifers for the first time, the colostrum is of the right quality.
Yeah.
Because I think that is so often, cows on the wrong diet pre-calving can have a lot of problems.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a question because I was reading an article, something that you'd commented on actually, Phil, and it was, can a well-managed calf overcome poor genetics?
Sorry,
Can a well-managed calf overcome poor genetics?
I think the answer to that is probably yes, but the genetics piece, it baffles me. A lot of good farmers totally understand this, but when we come to our dairies and our milk processors, we think about all sorts of protocols in our business. We are asked to meet a load of rigorous standards across, quite rightly, across the red tractor piece and everything else. But the one bit that very rarely gets dealt with or discussed or any sort of detail is the genetics bit. And I find that amazing, that our boards, that our processors haven't thought about this. Now, the one challenge is, and I thought about this on the way here today, I'm an absolute passionate modern Holstein breeder for so it's a medium-sized cow that's robust, very productive. But that isn't to say that's the right cow or the right genetics piece, because I go to some wonderful Montbéliard herds that are doing an amazing job, some Jersey farm. There's so many different ways and so many genetics pieces, some wonderful crossbreeding herds. So I'm not here to say that one's better than the other, but all I'm saying is whatever you're doing, have you got the Montbéliard guys that I know that are doing a super job? They bring Farol over from Coupex in France, and he's the expert in that field, and he understands it. With my Holstein hat on, data from all over the world, millions and millions of genomic data sets. I would argue there isn't a better breed on the planet to use data, and we've got ahead of that in terms of investing in cows and genetics in America, bringing embryos over, and now resulting in some very high PLI cattle in our herd, which are happier, healthier cows, reducing mastitis, improving via the sort of vigor and vitality of our Holstein is a world away from 20 years ago, and I would argue a world away from even some of the Holsteins you may see in a show ring, but that's a little bit more controversial.
Oh, yeah, because you show, don't you?
Tend to show, I've had my two boys, from being kids learning to show. And actually, I felt one of the early life lessons was learning to lose. And I don't mean that in a funny way. The calves probably weren't good enough, but, learning to lose was one of their first life lessons. And then taking part in those competitions and then, hopefully taking a first prize and getting the buzz out of that. And so, we've done the showing. It's mainly our showing pieces across beef cattle, or for me it was anyway, and that's where I cut my teeth and spent the time in the show ring and sort of built the brand from there.
Sorry, I'll just jump back to that thing about genetics. How often are you having conversations about that, Saskia? I think it's definitely becoming more of a spoken about topic, definitely across, and I think that's something I was probably very similar to Phil, quite blind to before I was in this job. So, like I say, we're from a Holstein herd at home. There was no other world to me other than just Holstein cows. But yeah, I'm exactly the same. I'm now seeing, some amazing Jersey, Montbéliard, and I've actually taken quite a liking to some of the crossbred herds, which I never thought I'd say before. But, I think it's just being more open-minded to it, and, there's another way of doing it, not just the standard Holstein cow. But yeah, there's definitely, it all comes down to what you're aiming for and what you want out of it, I think.
Yeah.
And your system. So there's no
system, definitely,
and we think about efficiency. So, probably if you looked at just pure efficiency stats in terms of amount of feed fed for sort of milk production and profitability out, the Jersey cow is an amazing animal. And I talk about it in the show ring in front of, the general public. If I went anywhere in the world, and particularly Africa, they're a very adaptable breed that can cope with, we're thinking of climate change.
Yeah.
Our cows did not enjoy 34 degrees a few weeks ago. No cows do. the Jersey's probably one breed that can just sort of sit there, cut away at 30 degrees and might be a bit stressed, but certainly not as stressed as some of those bigger, rangier cows that really do struggle. So, we're going to have to think about our genetics in terms of the future and adapting to change.
Yeah, well, what are some of the challenges that we're facing with the future, the way the climate's going, etc., from a calf and young stock point of view?
I think in terms of, like you say, what we want out of a cow and where we really want to head. And I think this is the biggest change that we've seen, we need longevity out of them and milk production. And it's all these things that we talk about. And I think that's definitely where your genetic potential plays a big part. But it also does come back to, if we're hindering them in the early stages, like we keep going back to.
Yeah, well, I'll kick in there. Again, back to fully housed, which I'm a big advocate of, only because we were slightly limited on land. So our limiting factor in our business was the lack of more land just immediately around us. So to go from what was a 1.5 million litre production unit to a 3.5 towards 4 million litre unit, we did it. We've done it our way. So those extensive grazing herds, amazing, phenomenal businesses and really profitable as well. But in that weather of 30 odd degrees, we've got the fans on, sand bedded or nice cubicles. We're thinking about the cow and its environment all the time. And our cows, particularly if we think about the southeast of the country, our cows going to be able to cope in that sort of heat outdoors in that weather and more I'm thinking more of Europe than maybe the UK straight away. But we've got things like the slick gene coming in terms of, cattle for hotter countries. There's a slick gene that means they shed they're very, they haven't got a lot of hair on and that sort of thing. So in the same way in Thailand, you've got chickens with no feathers, broiler chickens that are bred with no feathers on.
Scariest looking things ever, aren't they?
Yes, 100%. So this all comes around to the management. It comes around, but I think if we forget about processor, retailer and consumer in all of this, we miss a point because we have to do what's right. Sustainable intensification is the buzzword or has been.
Yeah.
And I do think to get food on the plate of consumers at the right price, that is the only way. There's lots of systems in here. We're not advocating any one system, but sustainable intensification is the only way that less farmers are going to feed more people in the future. And so if we get our heads around that, you need to think about, heat mitigation, you need to think about genetics, and these protocols, as I think larger units generally, and this is a big generalization, larger units generally have slightly more staff. They have a little bit more time to think about leadership and protocol. Nothing wrong with the family unit, but there is often some real pressure about time. And when you've got some scale, there's an inevitability. Those 7,000 dairy farmers today, the average herd size is racing towards 300 cows now. Yeah. And it's just an inevitable sort of way that the industry is moving. So I don't know, we slightly... It sort of went off,
that's
off,
perfectly
off
fine. That's what it's all
there,
about.
But that's sort of how I see the future.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's some wonderful, 50, 100 cow herds. There's some great new entrants coming in and robots and all sorts of different ways to, alongside another business or the milkshake shack at the end of the drive or whatever it is you're doing. Yeah. So there's so many different things. But you come back to the young stock, there's only one way and that's the right way, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that also like we were saying before about the cost of a beef calf and sustainability, really what we want now is that beef animal off the farm quicker. And, I think all that plays a massive part in where did it start? How did we deal with it in the beginning? Because like we say, a calf that's been hindered in the start, it's never going to be as efficient as that calf that had all the protocols in place and was treated the right way, really.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's something, I know that you deal with day in, day out, and we sometimes have this challenge at home on our unit is the dairy heifer that are reared alongside the beef calves, and we want the blues and the Charolais and the Anguses to be ready at we try and sell ours around that month to 6 weeks of age seems to be our sweet spot. Yeah. They've grown nicely, they're fully shaped, and that's where the market and we haven't got calves in our system too long, blocking the whole thing up. Dairy heifers, on the other hand, we're definitely trying to carve them closer to 23 months. Luckily at the moment we're averaging about 0.85 grams per day of growth, which is about on target. I'd be interested, Saskia. We have a competition effectively with the vets, LLM vets. You're given a number rather than a farm name, and you see where you rank in the 20 farms that are all weighing calves, and it's quite a good sport. But the sort of winners at the moment, we have touched number one at points. We're sort of always in the top 4 or 5 usually. But there is one farm on there, they're doing 1.1 or 1.2 kilograms of gain a day.
Yeah.
My question is, that's superb, but is it at a higher, where's the cost benefit?
Yeah, is it growth at all costs over the welfare and health?
Is that something we should be really aiming for, 1+, or do we then go, actually, that comes at a big cost, and actually at 0.8, our calves, I'm really happy with them. I just wonder where you thought
definitely.
That's at.
I mean, I think we get the 0.8 from, because we talk about KPIs all the time, and where do we need this heifer to be at a certain day to be, for its first service to calve down and all of this. I really think that, getting the that 1 kilo and above is probably something that we see that comes into place, first, second, third lactation, longevity, health, all that side of it.
Right.
And, it's not just the growth. And I think when we aim for 0.8 is a nice place to be, because, aiming, like you say, 22, 23, 24 months. But we have to remember that in that growth period, it's not just the calf itself, it's the future of it. The health, the mammary system, skeletal development, all of that comes into play as well. So I do think it does pay you back, but it's
you would always be I should be aiming for the 1+.
I think, personally, we always should be aiming for more with our calves anyway. And we do say 0.8 as a minimum, but that's not to say that, like I've got a farm that I work with, for example, we've been weighing their calves for a while, and they've been achieving, I think they've been doing 1.1 for quite a while now.
On dairy heifers.
On dairy heifers, yeah. And then this is just an example, but they were using a certain product because they deal with crypto on farm. And, it's not really an ideal product we want in there, but we use it because it's been helping to manage it, which has been fine. Yeah. And then, everything's been running quite smoothly. We've been getting 1.1, but I said, what do we want to achieve now? What do we want to do? And, it came to the fact, well, we want to get rid of this certain product.
Yes.
So we actually, put certain protocols in place, started using a vaccine recommended by the vet to help them, pulled the product out, and funnily enough, daily live weight gains completely plummeted.
Really?
And, it's just a play-off, we want that growth, but we didn't want to use this certain product.
Yeah.
So it's,
there's trade-offs,
yeah,
isn't
it's a trade-off completely, definitely. Yeah. But now, we've gone back to certain protocols and gone back to, maybe we need to go back to looking at the dry cow pen where they're carving down, hygiene, all of that. And the process starts again, because that had been a farm when I started going to, they were getting, I think, 0.65 in a daily live weight gain. So we'd put all of this stuff in place to hit that 1.1. You take one product out and it's like a Jenga stack. Everything just falls. So,
and if you move that member of staff changes,
absolutely,
and that's the Jenga stack again, isn't
definitely.
it? That goes right across the dairy piece. It's
frustrating, definitely, from my point of view, and I think I see it worse in your block calvers, because if they've got a calf rearer in, it's a long period of time for them to keep the said calf rearer on farm till the next block. So that can be definitely some of the hardest things we see. Someone else coming in and then farm managers going, well, why is this not working as well as it did last year? But attention to detail is everything, and some people have it, some people don't. Yeah. You've got to be passionate about it to
I think there is a bit of natural, in terms of, I think about tidiness around the farm, which sort of ties in with this. I think some people are just naturally tidy. Yeah. I can say as much as I want. Let's think about the cleanliness and the tidiness. And some people get it and some don't.
Yeah, definitely.
So
some people just don't see it.
No.
They're just blind to it, aren't they?
No, definitely.
Yeah. So I have, because that's all been fantastic, but I've got some quick fire sort of future focused questions for you. So we touched on technology and data a little bit earlier on, but how will technology and data change the way that we rear replacements in the future?
After you.
You go.
The technology and data, I think the data for me is all about genomics. So I think the improvement in 15 years from when I was in Canada and I saw the early genomic calves literally in pens, and you could see them. They were robust and rigorous. We used that particular bull. There was a bull called Mainstream Manifold.
What's her name?
What a name. And he became a millionaire sire because the daughters, when we used him at 23 months, 24 months old, we house all our dairy cows together. We have that sort of robust herd thing going on, I hope. And those 2-year-old heifers were battling in to be first in the milking parlour. That was the early push for me to really invest in those type of genetics. They were they weren't a pretty cow. So, they were robust, they were solid, they were smaller than we'd been used to, a bit more chest width. The rudders were fine, absolutely functional, but they wouldn't have won any shows. One straw seam in the backing calf, so they're highly fertile. All of these things, we've lowered our mastitis massively. We haven't changed the buildings. We haven't really changed any protocols. We've changed the genetics. So when you start to really embed that over a number of generations in your herd, you've got a much more resilient herd, I would argue. And so that'd be one piece that I would definitely say. And I think you're seeing it, Saskia.
Yeah.
Farmers have probably done the dairy, done the parlour, done the cow bit. And then now there's a lot of buzz around calf buildings. I've had a number of people come to see what we've done in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's because people are now, we need to get this right. And we're going to focus on it. And it's so important. And a £3,000 dairy heifer really focuses your attention on getting it right. So that would be my thing.
Anything to add?
I think going back to data technology, I think calves as a topic, everything's always changing. It's always evolving. Someone's always got a new idea, a new innovation. So I think it's, we can do one thing, change one thing, and then there'll always be something else we need to be aiming for. I think for me, especially in this job and what I do, it's using your basic data for what we've got at the minute. Like I said, anything from weighing your calves, doing your bacterial swabs, total proteins, use what's around you. And
you need to really solidify some basics that you've already got at your disposal.
Yeah, definitely.
And with beef genetics, that's very exciting because we're finding curve bendables, as they call them. So we're really focusing on easier and easier calving all the time. That's an absolute given. But then we have to produce something that sells really well at a month, 6 weeks. With the right protocols in place, it can get there. And then the processor and retailer gets something. We're looking at very much at early days to slaughter. So efficiency again, the particularly around the Angus piece at the minute, some really exciting bulls coming through that they're going to be, the 60 days we're knocking off the rearing phase before they're eligible for slaughter at the right weights. And that's huge efficiency gains for the beef side of, and look, dairy farmers, they might not realise it, but they are the new beef farmers. And that is where, you talk to the Americans, they are beef farmers today. Those $1,000, $1,500 black calves being sold at a week old, that is all of the profit they're making in those dairies. Yeah. So, it's quite exciting.
Next one. Will genetics or management techniques drive the next big leap forward in livestock performance?
Well, I think the two have to twin track.
And I think you've answered and you've skirted around it. I
think we've sort of done that one, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's always going to be the thing. We talk about genetic potential. Yeah. Genetic potential's not there if we've not got the management. And I think that is 100%. A massive.
We can sell the best bull semen from that Aberdeen Angus or the blue or some of our newer breeds. We're looking at Speckled Park now for some of those sort of more New Zealand type dairies. Super calves that are very easily born, but yet have potential to fill out and kill early as well. So, but if you don't get the management right, I can give you the best genetics in the world, and it really just won't do, and you're going to get high mortality, and all the that stuff that goes with it. So. And
just to finish off from the both of you as well, because we've actually went on for about 40 minutes now. Well done. For any of the farmers listening, if there was one thing you could ask them to change tomorrow, the one sort of super point that you would take away from this or let them take away from this, what would it be if they were to change something tomorrow?
I think for mine, and this just is based on what I see on farm, that's generally a really easy fix, hygiene. Just take a look at your hygiene, whether it's you get your vet, get your calf and youngstock specialist, someone out, do some swabs, and and this is from personal experience as well. We did ours at home, and that's easy to say. I thought we were doing a great job. We did them, and I was actually shocked. You can put your everything in, you can be following the protocols, disinfectants, detergents, you name it, and they'll always come back worse than you think. And we're not asking you to spend thousands on doing that, but just put a bit of thought into it and use the correct things, and it's always an easier fix than you think.
I think for me, it's as simple as don't get overwhelmed by, this is a big topic, and it's one of many topics on a farm day to day. So just take a deep breath. Don Benning at North Florida Holsteins once told me, he said, if an animal's got a problem, it's usually got a first name and a last name. So who is it that, and solutions focus? Who is that? The vets, use Cars Billington, use the vet team you've got. They're part of your team. Yeah. Don't feel like you're stranded on your island without any help. But there's lots. I mean, I'm on the phone every day to customers about beef genetics, the right bulls for the right job. You're on the yard on the phone with customers, helping them over those hurdles. The vets are doing the same. So we're all part of a great, wonderful team. This is an amazing industry where we all try and help each other. So I'd say, don't overthink it. Just take those first steps and just change one or two things at a time and just have a go. But don't do nothing.
Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful. Well, I think we'll draw that nice close there. Thank you so much, the both of you.
No, thank you.
Very insightful. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Very much, yeah. Good team sport.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you very much to our guests, Phil Halhead and Saskia Fletcher. This has been the Proud to Farm podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please like, subscribe and recommend to your friends.